My name's Mark Hatcher, and I pastor the Highway Church of the Nazarene. Been here about 10 years now, and just so blessed to be able to share this story to the glory of God with you. So our story of faith and how God is deepening and strengthening and growing faith in us towards Him. I think we've come to learn that there's those times in life where, given our preference, we would want to run from it, or those circumstances we would want to avoid altogether. But we learn that God's ways are not our ways, and He does things that we would never do. And so He often leads us to those times and allows those times, and He uses every bit of those times to help us know Him and experience Him in ways that we never would otherwise. And so in this last year and a half, we've been, and my family and I have been in such a season. On September 11th, 2014, God brought a little baby boy, 3 weeks old, into our lives, and it's been an amazing experience. We thought originally that it would just be a very temporary situation. We would just be providing temporary care for him. But we somehow felt at the beginning in our hearts that God had something much greater in mind. And so when we drove down to the hospital to meet this little baby boy for the first time, we found out he was very, very sick and had a lot of serious situations in regards to his health. We met originally with a team of doctors and with the head neurologist in ICU there, and they explained that among a lot of the other issues that he had some issues with his brain that they described as extensive and very, very serious. And so we met him in the hospital, and we had that original meeting. I remember on that Thursday we had that original meeting with the team of doctors and the neurologist, and they began to describe his condition, and I just can't explain it, but somehow the faith and confidence that I had in God that was already there, it just began to well up in me to the point that it just kind of erupted, and I just kind of interrupted the neurologist's story midstream, and I just said, I hear what you're saying, and I looked at the 6 or 8 doctors standing there in the room, and I said, I hear what you're saying, and I deeply respect all of you and what you do. You got to know that. I said, but I believe in a God, and I serve a God who has the power to touch blind eyes and heal people and make them to see again, and touch ears that can never hear, and cause them to hear again, and cause people to walk that could never walk, and He even has the power to raise the dead. And I just kind of went on this speech there right in this hospital room, and I said, I believe with all my heart God can heal this child. And if I said that to a congregation like yours or like mine, you'd probably hear a lot of amens, but the response I got was far from enthusiastic. It was, the look on their faces was more like, oh, you're one of those, And it was more like, you poor, pitiful fool. And I'll never forget, the neurologist, she said, wait here a minute. And she stepped out in the hallway, and she brought back this monitor, and she said, do you see this? And it was a picture of this little boy's brain, and she said, do you see all these white spots? And I didn't have a clue what I was really looking at, but I said yes. And she said, matter-of-factly, she said, you need to understand how serious this is. And I said, I'm listening to you. I said, but you still need to understand that our God can heal this child. And so that meeting ended, and then the next day we were released from the hospital, and we brought him home on a Thursday. And then on that very next Sunday, we had him in worship with us. And I'll never forget it. It was right here on the stage of our church, and we kind of just modified the order of worship that we were usually used to, and we just had a prayer time for him. And we did what Christians believe in doing for the sick and people who need God's healing touch. We anointed him with oil, and we prayed for him. And it was such a powerful time. I'll never forget it when our brothers and sisters in Christ gathered around, and we're all crying out to God for God's touch on this child. And I can't explain it, and I don't know if I've ever felt it since, but I literally felt God do something. And in all honesty, if you would have asked me, did God heal him? I would have had to say, I don't know. And so then, fast forward, this boy turns a year old, and we had the chance to take him back to that original hospital where he was so sick, and where he was taken to when he was first born. And we got to take him back to the neurologist. He had a 1-year-old checkup. And I was so hoping that the original neurologist would be there, but she no longer worked at the hospital. And so it was a different one. But we had the test and had all the scans. And then when she came back in the room, she says, well, I have the results of the test for you. And she said, this child is completely fine. There are no issues with this child at all. And she was absolutely stunned. She said, it's unbelievable where this child was a year ago to where he is today. She said, this doesn't just happen. And even we knew that. I mean, even we knew that it doesn't just happen. And so we had that awesome moment to share with her our faith a little bit and to just to point her to how awesome our God is. And she was very skeptical as well. And she said, well, I'm going to go back and look at the test results again. She said, I'm just going to make sure there's no error here because this just doesn't seem right to us. But we were celebrating. And I have to tell you, our faith just exploded in that moment to see a mighty demonstration of God's power, his touch upon this little child. It was just it's a major boost to our faith. But I don't even think that's the main part of the story. That's an awesome thing. We celebrate that. But God was also stretching our faith in ways that we weren't truly aware of in the moment. Because while we thought that we were just giving temporary care to this child, it quickly looked like this was becoming a more permanent arrangement. And we were absolutely thrilled with that because from the first hour that we saw this child, God put such a love in our hearts for him that it even surprised us. And so we were so grateful for that. And so we begin to pray towards that. We begin to hope for that. We begin to expect that. And there's so many details of the story that I can't share with you for time's sake and all that. But just through that whole process, there were so many uncertain days. There were so many, honestly, dark days. There were so many days of crying out to God and pleading with God. And there were days that even we battled our fleshly anger, to be honest. And there were so many days of just crying out to God without ceasing and fasting and praying and you name it. We were doing it. We believed that this child was to stay with us. And anyway, through that whole process, besides God's healing touch on the child, which was awesome, besides seeing God's hand order this child's future, God was doing another work of faith in us. He was stretching our faith in other ways. We actually began in this whole process to experience the miracle of God changing our hearts. Because at the very beginning, we were asking God to do very specific things for us. We were again, pleading with him and crying out to him and doing everything we knew to do. And we were fasting, you name it. We were doing it, saying, God, please do this for us. And then I'll never forget it, as long as I live. One morning, I was alone with the Lord, just spending some time in his presence in prayer, the word, and I'll never forget, it's like a question he impressed upon me. He said, Mark, would you pray for me to get all the glory for this, no matter how this turns out for you? And I, to be honest, I recoiled from that because I knew what he was asking. I knew he was asking, it was kind of like that Abraham and Isaac moment, where Isaac was asked to take his only son, the son whom he loved, and give him back, and the son they'd been waiting for. And I knew what he was asking. I knew he was asking for me to take all my hopes and dreams and expectations and desires and just kind of hand them over and surrender them. And I wish I could tell everybody that I had the depth of faith in that moment to do that in that instant, but I wasn't there yet. And honestly, it took my wife and I a few days to get there. But God is so gracious and he's so good. He is so patient and gentle and loving. He led us there over the course of the next few days. He led us to that place of faith where we needed to be. And I can tell you with sincerity that we got to the place where we could finally pray genuinely, God, no matter what you want to do, God, whatever it takes for you to get the maximum glory from this, that's what we want to. And we began to pray that way. Our prayers totally changed because God changed our hearts. And we came to learn, at least for us, we came to learn that that's one of the most dangerous prayers you can ever pray, the whatever prayer. And yet it's one of the most powerful prayers you can pray because it helps you experience God in ways that you never had before, and it unleashes his power, his blessings, and his presence in your life in awesome ways. And God helped us to see, this is the lesson he taught us anyway, he helped us to see that one of the greatest demonstrations of faith is not praying for something impossible until you get it. Faith includes that for sure, but for us, he began to teach us that faith is also praying in some of those difficult situations of your life, praying, God, no matter if you act the way I want you to, no matter if you answer this prayer like I'm asking you to, God, we will love you and we will serve you and we will follow you and we will praise you and we will worship you no matter what, because you're God and you're faithful. And so God just simply taught us through all that you can trust him in all things.